Hey people, it's Niaz talking. Now I want to do another piece on Black history, and this is from the website www.13.org. It's called the Dred Scott v. Sanford case 1857. So here it goes. In Dred Scott v. Sanford, argued 1856, decided 1857, the Supreme Court ruled that Americans of African descent, whether free or slave, were not American citizens and could not sue in federal court. The court also rules that Congress lacked the power to ban slavery in the U.S. territories. Finally, the court declared that the rights of slave owners were constitutionally protected by the Fifth Amendment because slaves were categorized as property. The controversy began in 1833 when Dr. John Emerson, a surgeon with the U.S. Army, purchased Dred Scott, a slave, and eventually moved Scott to a base in the Wisconsin Territory. Slavery was banned in the territory pursuant to the Missouri Compromise. Basically, the Missouri Compromise, where they said the land south of that Missouri would be the uppermost border of slavery. Everything north of that was free. Anyway, actually, I'll have to do another video on that. Anyway, Scott lived there for the next 4 years, hiring himself out for work during the long stretches when Emerson was away. In 1840, Scott, his new wife, and their young children moved to Louisiana and then to St. Louis with Emerson. Emerson died in 1843, leaving the Scott family to his wife, Eliza Irene Sanford. In 1846, after laboring and saving for years, the Scots sought to buy their freedom from Sanford, but she refused. Dred Scott then sued Sanford in a state court, arguing that he was legally free because he and his family had lived in a territory where slavery was banned. In 1850, the state court finally declared Scott free. However, Scott's wages had been withheld pending the resolution of his case, and during that time, Mrs. Emerson remarried and left her brother, John Sanford, to deal with her affairs. Mr. Sanford, unwilling to pay the back wages owed to Scott, appealed the decision to the Missouri Supreme Court. The court overturned the lower court's decision and ruled in favor of Sanford. Scott then filed another lawsuit in a federal court claiming damages against Sanford's brother, John F.A. Sanford, for Sanford's alleged physical abuse against him. The jury ruled that Scott could not sue in federal court because he had already been deemed a slave under Missouri law. Scott appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, reviewed the case in 1856. Due to a clerical error at the time, Sanford's name was misspelled in court records. The Supreme Court, in an infamous opinion written by Chief Justice Roger B. Taney, ruled that it lacked jurisdiction to take Scott's case because Scott was, or at least had been, a slave. First, the court argued that they could not entertain Scott's case because federal courts, including the Supreme Court, are courts of peculiar and limited jurisdiction, quotes, and may only hear cases brought by select parties involving limited claims. For example, under Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution, federal courts may only hear cases brought by citizens of the United States. The court ruled that because Scott was a Negro whose ancestors were imported into this country and sold as slaves, and was not a member of the political community formed and brought into existence by the Constitution, Scott was not a citizen and had no right to file a lawsuit in federal court. Secondly, the court argued that Scott's status as a citizen of a free state did not necessarily give him status as a U.S. citizen. While these states were free to create their own citizenship criteria and had done so before the Constitution even came into being, the Constitution gives Congress exclusive authority to define national citizenship. Moreover, the court argues that even if Scott was deemed free under the laws of a state, he would still not qualify as an American citizen because he was black. The court asserted that in general, U.S. citizens are only those who were members of the political community at the time of the Constitution's creation, along with those individual heirs and slaves were not part of this community. Finally, the court argued that in any case, Scott would not be defined as free by virtue of his residence in the Wisconsin Territory because Congress lacked the power to ban slavery in U.S. territories. The court viewed slaves as property, and the Fifth Amendment forbids Congress from taking property away from individuals without just compensation. Justice Benjamin Curtis issued a strong dissent. Now, I just want to say something. Now, a lot of people criticize Roger B. Taney and saying this was the worst decision. Now, if you look at this from an unbiased perspective, in what is termed in legal perspectives constitutional originalism, it's quite a masterstroke of reading the Constitution as it was originally written. And if we look at it with an unbiased eye, the founding fathers very clearly intended that black people would not ever be deemed as citizens or even people who had to be respected by the laws of the United States. So it's unfair to blame him. He actually did his job. it was the fault of the Constitution, because if you remember the infamous 3/5 section, where it said all others shall be deemed as 3/5, i.e. all slaves. So basically it said that if you are 3/5 of a human being, therefore you are obviously cannot be a citizen. All right, let's move on. The decision in Dred Scott v. Sanford exacerbated rising sectional tensions between the North and South. Although the Missouri Compromise had already been repealed prior to the case, the decision nonetheless appeared to validate the Southern version of national power and to embolden pro-slavery Southerners to expand slavery to all reaches of the nation. Unsurprisingly, anti-slavery forces were outraged by the decision, empowering the newly formed Republican Party and helping fuel violence between slave owners and abolitionists on the frontier. Following the Civil War, the Reconstruction Congress passed and the states ratified the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, all of which directly overturned the Dred Scott decision. Today, all people born or naturalized in the United States are American citizens who may bring suit in federal court. Okay. Now, the lesson I want you to draw from this is, people keep saying civil rights or human rights. Again, if you understand the history of the United States, the laws and the existence of the nation was never designed to give black people human rights, even if they were free. And I dare say that it was never meant to even recognize them as human. You saw that bit where it said that they were recognized as property. Anyway. And obviously you can see the effects to this day, where people are being murdered every day, they're having the civil rights violated. So anyway, read up on the Dred Scott v. Sanford case. I'm going to put the link to this website in the description. Thank you, comment, rate, share, and subscribe. If you want to support this channel, I'll leave the PayPal in the description. Peace, family.